Chapter 13 of Radomski is about learning. Learning is a primary therapeutic mechanism underlying many, if not all, occupational therapy interventions. Any handouts should address health literacy concerns and are developed with an understanding of the cultural, social, and cognitive issues that might affect the teaching session. All these concerns need to be addressed in order for effective teaching to take place. Teaching strategies need to be consciously designed to maximize learning using methods designed to support different learning styles, which are visual, oral, reading or writing, or kinesthetic learners. Now, let's talk about the human information processing model for a little bit. Learning is linked to memory, specifically the encoding and retrieval of information. Here, people hold environmental stimuli very briefly in a series of short-term sensory and stores before transferring it to limited capacity working memory. Let's talk about controlled versus automatic information processing. Controlled processing is technically a temporary activation of series or sequence of elements in a long-term memory under the attention and control of the thinker. A great example of this is when you first started driving and how nerve-wracking it is with all the processes, steps to get the car moving, right? We move the mirrors, we put the car from parking to reverse, check our mirrors, look behind us to make sure there's no car behind us. And there's just so much effort to remember all these steps. Now let's move on to automatic processing. Now what automatic processing is, with enough controlled processing, a task requires less and less concentration to carry out. Automatic processing occurs when specific contextual stimuli, internal or external, to the person trigger the activation of a specific learned sequence in a long-term memory. So using the car example again, after time and experience, all those steps become super easy and almost natural. No longer do we put so much effort into making sure there's no car behind us, putting the car from parking to reverse. It all becomes natural. It becomes easier. And that's automatic processing. Let's talk about some implications of information processing memory model. Some things that we need to be aware of are distractions. These can be from pain, fatigue, and noise. Knowing this allows us to plan sessions so that patients can use limited capacity cognitive resources to hold and store stimuli related to the new skills or strategies. We do this by helping our patients use effective control processes such as linking the new information to something they already know. Therapists recognize that for many skills, that learning endpoint is not proficiency, but automaticity. So we want them to naturally just do these things, as spoken before in that car example. Now let's talk about the fundamentals of the teaching learning process. First is the therapeutic use of feedback. Here, the functions of feedback. Well, what's the functions of feedback? It's temporarily motivating and energizing effect and a guidance effect that informs the learner how to correct an error on the next trial. There are also different types of feedback. First one is the extrinsic feedback. There's also knowledge of results and knowledge of performance, and these are knowledge of results provides information about outcomes, such as you've got it, or you got your shirt on, you took the cap right off that jar. While knowledge of performance is related to the qualitative descriptions of a performance, such as you shifted your weight too far to the left, or you bent your elbow. Intrinsic feedback is information that patients receive through their own senses. Now, let's talk about feedback schedules. Immediate and summary feedback. The frequency and timing of feedback can profoundly influence the acquisition and learning of task-specific skills and strategies. Faded feedback is decreasing from your initial feedback. So starting off with a lot of feedback and just giving them less and less with time. Then there's bandwidth feedback. With bandwidth feedback, an acceptable range of performance is defined, and the subject receives feedback only when performance is outside of the range and the subject's performance improves. Feedback is provided less frequently. Now let's talk about therapeutic use of practice. Block versus random practice. Block practice you can think of as doing something repetitively or drill. As most efficient schedule for learning a task, using a blocked format, the same skill or strategy is practiced over a number of repetitions, after which the next skill or strategy is rehearsed. As such, block practice is a form of practice with low contextual interference. Now, random practice, a means of gaining mastery over a skill through training exercises that vary the sequence of elements in that skill. Compared with block practice, in which a skill is learned by fixed repetitive drilling, random practice, with its frequently modified routine, results in better retention of the skill after training is completed. Part whole practice is also used. Therapists also decide whether the patient practice the whole task or components of a task. We also have intensity of practice. Intensity of practice includes a number of features of practice, including practice of difficult tasks that are directly related to the performance objective, high rates of repetition, focus on transfer of the skill to the performance environment, and choosing tasks with meaning to the client. Now, occupational therapists as teachers. We are teachers and we educate our clients. So, to do that, we need to assess learning needs and readiness. Based on our assessments of the client and identification of barriers to learning, the therapist determines who will be the subject or subjects of the teaching. It could be the patient, family member, or both. We set client-specific learning goals. We as therapists use results of our assessments and estimate of the treatment time available to set learning and cognitive objectives for each patient. Our treatment plan around transfer and generalization goals by identifying reinforcements in the natural environment and incorporating into treatment, stimuli common to both training and real-world environments. We create learning opportunities through our interventions. We as therapists deliberately use context, feedback, and practice to help patients meet learning goals. We enhance motivation and recall by linking new skill or strategies with patients' specific interests, knowledge, and abilities. And being an effective teacher, we make the effort to overcome barriers of learning. We also need to develop a plan to promote patient adherence. As part of the teaching, therapists need to address issues of patient adherence, defined as the degree to which patients act in accordance with advice of a healthcare professional. Acknowledging and compliance is difficult also helps clients and therapists set up an adherence plan at the time of recommendation by linking the home program to a specific point in the daily routine and purposely simplifying the recommendations. In developing this adherence plan, clients and therapists identify any social, technological, or environmental supports available to shore up adherence, such as family members who can cue the client either in person through text messaging alarms that can be set or checklists that could be followed. Finally, clients are more likely to comply with adherence plans when there is a clear benefit. Lastly, evaluating achievement of learning goals. This is the last part as being a teacher. Effective teachers routinely assess clients' progress towards learning goals, typically by changing the training task or environment and evaluating carryover. Family members perform return demonstrations of new techniques such as transfers. And based on performance or other changes in the learning status, therapists adjust learning goals throughout the intervention.